Hello, I'm Chris from the FPL Dude, and welcome back to another Fantasy Premier League video for the 2021-2022 season. In today's video, we do have a very special guest here with us today. It's Andrew, also known as the FPL Sonaldo. You can find him on Twitter. Please do give him a follow, as he does present a very unique and creative content for FPL. He's very helpful as well. So guys, do give him a follow. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Hey, Chris. Very good. Thank you for having me on. This is my second appearance on the FPL Dude. And so it's very nice to see you. I was back on your show in February, I believe, and had a very good time speaking with you. And so, yeah, very happy to be back on.
Same here, mate. I'm very glad that you came over. Last time we were close to the end of the season. This time is the beginning of the season, so I believe there are going to be many new users watching us, people that might not have played FPL previously. But even for those that have been playing that, I believe this should potentially be a very good video for everyone, because we are going to discuss a bit of our strategies, what have we learned from the FPL community so far, and we are then going to discuss about some players. Hello, Andrew. How has your season been going so far?
So I do want to make a quick plug. So you can find me on Twitter at FPL_Sonaldo. And I run a show with my friend at FPL Bruno with two O's. It's called The Enabler Show. And it's basically a very basic show on Twitter Space, where you can listen to us week in and week out and talking about up-to-date strategies and transfers and such and such. So you can find me on Twitter. Talking about strategies and how I'm doing this year, I'm having a very decent start. Last year, I finished in the top 10K, and so a very, very successful season. I think there's multiple reasons as to being able to finish so high. And the more I play this game, the more I realize that 30% of it might be luck, maybe 40% of it might be luck, but certainly there's a definite skill when it comes to being a very good FPL manager. I guess one of the strategies I can talk about, I know I'm rambling here, is from FPL Salah, and he's one of my so-called mentors of FPL. And Salah Abdul is on Twitter as well, and one of the things that he emphasizes is being very relatively safe in the first half of the season. And so for the newcomers, what that really means is for the first half of the season, when you log on to Live FPL and put your team code in, you can kind of see how template your team is. And for me, I like to keep it around that 80%, 85%, 75% template mark, and kind of do that for the first half of the season, and then kind of really attack towards the end. And another very important aspect of being template is also making the right captain picks. Captaincy is a very, very big deal in FPL. And so it's very important not to be so differential with captain picks. So for example, this week, it was a no-brainer to have Salah as your captain in game week 5. And I know a lot of people were talking about, captaining Trent and captaining, who else, right? Ronaldo, and all very good, all very, very good picks. But when you go against effective ownership and you go against high template players, I think you're playing a very dangerous game in the beginning of the season.
Yes, we discussed a bit in the previous video. FPL is actually a marathon. It's not game week for game week. You have 38 game weeks. At the end of it, you will get your results. So you can't just jump in on the players that you believe will do good for the next two and then take a hit, take them out, and do something like that. I believe that planning ahead is one of the most important parts in FPL. So yes, if you would like to go for perhaps a template team, then that is something very good to do as well, because you do not lose out on many points if something terrible happened with you that week, especially if you go for a template captain. Then if you do bad, then pretty much everybody else is going to do bad, so you got nothing to worry about. But if you decide to potentially go for differential captains early, you might get rewarded, but if you don't, it's a big risk that we want to avoid. So I do totally agree with you there. At the beginning of the season, people should potentially play a bit more template. Then towards the end of the season, you would then consider if you want to defend your position or you would like to risk it and try to climb a bit higher.
Yes, absolutely.
So yes, I do totally agree with you there. Do you have any more strategies that you have perhaps learned now throughout the last seasons you've played FPL?
I think some strategies I can think of on the spot is another thing is to not get so sucked into trying to go for just the top level team players. We will get into it later when we talk about the Chelsea swing fixtures in game week 7. But for example, right, just because there's Mount and Havertz and all these almost world-class players on the best teams, it doesn't necessarily mean a good player for FPL, right? And for example, what I mean is Sar is an excellent FPL pick because at his price point at 6.1, he does play for Watford, but he is Watford's talisman. He's Watford's key player. He's Watford's everything go-to guy, and a very important stat that I can say in game week 5 is his XGI percentage was 82%. To break that down, he was basically involved in 82% of all goals involving Watford. So basically, if Watford's going to score, there's a high chance that Sar's going to be involved. So you'd rather go for players like that. Another one I can think of right now that's hot is Conor Gallagher from Crystal Palace. So that's my second strategy. And the last thing I do want to mention is a special shout out to at Net the Hall with Gabe, Nima, and FPL Mariner. And when you start to really get into FPL and you take your knowledge to the next level, you really can get into stat diving and statistical analysis. And for example, FPL Mariner, I know, lives in Singapore and doesn't have the time to watch the game. So a lot of his judgment is based on statistics. So really you've got to think of FPL as more than just eye tests. There's many special nuances and special skills that are involved in being a good manager. So it's very, very fun game in my opinion.
Yeah, I do totally agree with you on that one. I do believe that whenever you try to bring some player in, you should consider if he's a key player for that team. And as you mentioned, Mount, no matter how good of a player he is, he's not the key player for Chelsea. He's not the penalty taker. He's not expected to do that good, not because he's not good, but because perhaps Chelsea is not going to find themselves involved in so many goals and their main striker is pretty much Lukaku. So you don't know who to expect the goals to come from. Should it come from the fullbacks? Should they have a crossing or an assist? Will it come from Mount? Will it be Havertz? Will it be Kovacic? There are just so many what ifs. But if you go for players like Sar or potentially Rafinha or players like this, you are pretty much going to expect returns from them every time. At least every second time their team gets involved in a goal.
Exactly.
So that is very good thing to consider, guys. And Sar does cost around 2 million less than Mount. So we talked about guys, we talked about strategies. Right now we have 3 simple things that you could potentially follow. The first one was playing it simple, playing it template. The second one is pretty much planning ahead, and the third one is to go for those key players that actually have that best potential for each of their individual teams. I think that we can move on to the goalkeepers right now. Me personally think that this is going to be the time where those elite goalkeepers actually earn that highest amount of points. I think that players like Edison that are having fantastic fixtures ahead are going to be He is going to be one of those goalkeepers that will earn the highest amount of points now, but unfortunately it does cost around 6 millions. What do you think about these expensive goalkeepers?
Yeah, I agree with you in the terms that Mendy and Ederson might come out with the most amount of points in the stretch of runs starting in game week 7, especially with the fixture swing. But I do disagree with you in going for one of them because there's two reasons. Number one is that at 6.0 for a keeper, I truly believe in my philosophy of keeping a 4.5 keeper and under. The reason being is that that money in FPL is very valuable and that money can be spent better elsewhere for more potential. Again, it's a game of combinations. And I know that in the chats I've had with you, how you think of combination of points between 2-3 players instead of just one player. So again, I would go for a keeper under that 4.5. And secondly, I think this is a very good observation I've had over the years is that just because you have a keeper that plays for a top team doesn't necessarily mean good things for FPL, because sometimes clean sheets are very hard to predict, very hard to come by. So instead you want to have a keeper that's going to get a ton of saves. I think Ederson in game week 4 or 5, I can't remember, had 3 shots on him or 3, barely any trouble. So that's the point I wanted to make about trying to avoid going for such an expensive keeper.
I cannot say that I recommend those goalkeepers. I just think that those goalkeepers are going to be earning most points out of all other goalkeepers. But FPL is not about one individual player. You have a team, you have a combination of players. So I think that if you combine a 6 million midfielder with a 4.5 million goalkeeper, is going to turn out much better than combining a 6 million goalkeeper with a 4.5 million midfielder. So yes, when it comes to that, I do totally agree with you. Do you have any particular goalkeepers perhaps that you have in mind that you would like to recommend for people to go for?
Yeah, I think at the 4.5 million, there's a couple options. Gaeta seems like a decent shout for Crystal Palace. He has Brighton, Leicester, Arsenal, Newcastle, Man City, Wolves, Burnley, Aston Villa in the next, I think, 8 game weeks. So very solid, safe, long-term pick. Raya is also a decent shout. And personally, I have Sanchez, and we'll probably just keep him on my wild card. Again, once you set on a 4.5 keeper, you do not want to be wasting transfers to move them around. So very important to stay with the keeper of your choice from the start. And I think that a keeper you should avoid is the Arsenal keepers, because there's rotation risk, as well as Arsenal are just not good defensively. In game week 5 against Burnley, they should have lost the game in the second half. Burnley's finishing was just awful, so they survived, but I would stay away from Arsenal. And at 5 million, it's not worth it. And I know a lot of people are very excited about Leeds fixtures coming up, but at 5.0 for Meslier is a huge trap. So in my opinion, stay away from Meslier as well.
Yeah, I do totally agree with you. These are goalkeepers you cannot predict. I believe that even last season, Arsenal and Leeds were one of those teams that kept it clean least times out of all teams, or something similar. Even though Arsenal did not allow so many goals, they did seem to allow goal every game they played. I believe that Meslier and Leno are to avoid it as well.
Yes.
Do you believe that we are done talking about the goalkeepers, or perhaps you got something to add? Should we move to the defenders?
Yes, let's do it.
Yes, when it gets to the defenders now, I believe there are so many defenders to choose from, at least right now. There is one in particular that I believe has that best potential. It seems to be the most essential defender out of them all, and that is Trent Alexander-Arnold. He even costs 7.5 millions. That is the most out of all defenders. I believe that he even cost around 0.5 millions more than the second-ranked Robertson. What do you think about Trent?
Yeah, I mean, excellent point there. Trent, in my opinion, is the best player in FPL. And I'll try to explain why. Because at 7.6 million now for a Liverpool defender that has the clean sheet potential and defensive points, if you look at his heat map, he's basically a Liverpool attacker playing on the right wing, right? So it's a steal of a price. I think he's too template to go against, and there's a reason why he's too template. Just looking at his numbers, he's involved in 26% of all Liverpool goals and assists, with game week 5 him not even playing. So that just goes to show how essential he is to the team as a defender. Also, I would like to say a very important point about Trent is, um, as much as I love Adama Traore for Wolves, I made this point, I think, on my space, where I said that I would rather have Adame. I would rather have one cross from Trent over 20 crosses from Adama Traore. That's how good and deadly his crossing is. So Trent is an automatic pick for me and someone you should not go against.
I do totally agree with you on that one. He is one of the most essential defenders that everybody pretty much needs to have in their team. It's not only that he is good by himself, he actually plays for a very good Liverpool team that are not afraid to realize their chances into goals whenever they get the opportunity to do that. When we now talk about a bit more cheaper defenders than this one, because not everybody could potentially afford him, or not everybody can have few elite defenders. Do you have any cheap defenders in mind that cost up to 5 millions that you could say, I want him in my team?
Yeah, very, very good question. I think that at the cheap point, I would recommend the Wolves defenders. I really like the look of Semedo. I know I was quite early on Semedo, and it seems like in game week 5, everybody brought him in, and I know they had a really bad game in game week 5, but for me, I think Semedo is a good pick in the long run. His fixtures are awesome. Wolves have great fixtures coming up. Semedo is one of those very attacking wing backs. They play a 5-back system, and I think what's his name, Bruno, the coach of Wolves, isn't gonna go away from that 5-back system, which makes Semedo a much more safer pick over Marçal, who has competition like Johnny. So Semedo is going to be kind of a lock as a starter. He's also very good at making overlapping runs. He's in half spaces. He's, great link up play, making the right crosses. He drifts into the opposition box when guys like Moutinho spread out wide and Traore spread out wide. And in game week 4, he had 2 big chances. His finishing is suspect, but at the same time, Semedo is for 4.9 of great value. There's fillers such as Livramento and White, but I'm not going to talk too much about those budget defenders. But I do want to mention, I know I'm rambling here, sorry, Chris. But,
no, it's okay. It's okay.
I do want to mention that a very important strategy to me at this point in the season is, as you know, you and I will be doing a wild card in game week 7, and we'll be probably recording a show next week. So I'm looking forward to that. But with that in mind, I would do everything I could to bring in one City defender and one Chelsea defender, if not two by game week 7. And the reason being is their fixtures are very, very good. I'd like to know who you would bring in terms of Chelsea and City defenders in game week 7.
I first of all thought that potentially we can go for those fullbacks. Those are the players that I pretty much appreciate a bit more than those center backs, like Rudiger and Dias. These are players that I don't actually tend on going on, even though I believe they are going to be those guarantee starter playing for their teams. I would rather go for Cancelo and potentially risk it a bit, because I do believe that he is very good player. He does have very good clean sheet potential, but he does offer us an amazing attacking return potential as well.
Yeah.
So I believe that if he plays 4 out of 5 games, that's good enough for me. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I think I like your thinking there. I think there's 4 options here, right? So for Chelsea, I would recommend Rudiger or Reece James, and for City, I would recommend Diaz or who you mentioned, Cancelo. Yeah, and it's very simple thinking, right? Because Cancelo and Reece James, I think Reece James is more of a lock of a starter this year, but there's definitely that potential of pep roulette and rotation risk. But it seems like Diaz and Rudiger are the much more safer team locks. I want to challenge your philosophy here, because a lot of people think that it's very easy to think that going for a more high potential in Cancelo is better than going for like a Rudiger. But actually, Rudiger's points potential might be safer and better than like a Rafinha even. And the reason being is because they play for Chelsea and they have that clean sheet potential. And this is a philosophy that I got from a friend of mine on Twitter at Ray. And so shout out Ray. I think he was mentioning how that Rudiger has more potential to get more points than even a Rafinha. So it's very important to kind of be open-minded about not just going for Cancelo, and especially the guy who's failed me like crazy is 2-pointer special Luke Shaw. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that guy has failed me a lot this season as well. I did have him since the beginning of the season. There was only one thing that I did analyze and considered. It was that out of the top 30 players last season by total FPL points, I believe only 4 were defenders.
Oh wow, okay.
Or from the top 25 at least, not 30 perhaps, but from the top 25 only 3 or 4 were defenders. So I believe that defenders don't actually have that good of a roof or potential. This is the main reason why I actually want those attacking minded defenders. Then I could potentially get rid of them. We are using a wildcard very soon, so it does not really matter in the long run who we bring in right now for game week 6. But for everyone that does not have a wildcard, then you could potentially just ignore game week 6 and bring in players that are about to do very good now for the next 5 to 10 fixtures. And yes, I do believe that City and Chelsea are going to be most definitely very good defenses to target.
Yeah. I mean, the last thing I will say about defenders before we go to midfielders is, if you have a wild card in your back pocket, like Chris and I, then you want to just take punts in game week 6 and then bring in those Chelsea City defenders. But if you already use your wild card and you don't have your wild card, then you want to plan ahead and bring in those Chelsea City assets now instead, or just save your transfer in game week 6 and then bring it in game week 7.
Yeah, that is totally understandable, and I do agree with you on that one. If we are now done talking about the defenders, I think we can move on to the midfielders.
Yep.
And there are so many interesting midfielders right now. There are so many informed players. There are so many cheap midfielders that are expected to do very good. I can take a look at Gray. I can take a look at Rafinha, Sarr, and potentially even Benrahma. Do you think any of these players has that best potential and is a bit different than the rest of them? Or do you think that these are just players that do seem to have similar potential and it does not really matter who you go for?
I think hold on, let me bring up some stats. I think I like I think Rafinha is the best shout right now. Leeds have an amazing run of fixtures. Rafinha is such a good player. One thing I would say about Rafinha that's frustrating is he is not he's not a very good hauler. So,
Mhm.
he's very involved. His statistics are great, but he just doesn't seem to haul. And I think this is what I noticed last year as well. So you got to
Mhm.
be patient with him, because every game you come out thinking that Rafinha should have 3 goals, but he'll just end up with 1 goal or one
Mhm.
assist, and
Mhm.
that's just who he is. But at 6.5 million, with his fixtures coming up, he's the most undervalued player in the game. And a very cool stat I'll read out is that his XGI percentage, which is goal involvement for Leeds, is
Mhm.
around that 53% mark. So every other goal that Leeds scores, Rafinha is most likely
Mhm.
involved. And so this brings us back to the original strategy about, just
Key
because it's
players.
Leeds, yeah, he's the key player for Leeds. That's just a much better option than
Mhm.
going for a Chelsea mid. So I would avoid Chelsea mid at all costs, because not all costs, but I would avoid Chelsea mid. Maybe Mount is a good shout, but their points are just so spread out. You just don't know where it's
Mhm.
going to come from, and they're very expensive for FPL. So
Yeah.
I like the Rafinha shout a lot. And the next shout I would like to say is Sar. I really like
Mhm.
Sar. Game week 5, he was amazing, right? I think in game week 5, his XGI was like 82%, which means he was involved in like basically 4 out of 5 goals he's involved in for Watford. So I really like Sar. He's good price. He's very attacking. He's strong. He's good technical
Mhm.
player.
Mhm.
So I think Sar is a good shout as well.
Yeah, I do agree with you there on that one. Gray
Mm-hmm.
might have been doing well. So
Mm-hmm.
if you guys don't have enough money to actually go for Rafinha or Sardin, Gray could potentially do fine. But if you want
Mm-hmm.
those players that are expected to do best, then yes, Sar and Rafinha are most certainly one of those players that are expected to do good, mainly because they are key players for their team. Now, even though I think that Mount might be able to do good for the run of next 4 to 5 fixtures, it's just a too big risk to take, guys.
I would like to clarify something real
Mhm.
quick. Watford's fixtures aren't that great, so it is something to consider.
Mhm.
And also on that note, I know that Conor Gallagher is a very hot topic right now, and
Mhm.
I think he's a good player, right? I think he's a great player. He's the key talisman for Crystal Palace. Makes amazing half space runs. He's very good at link up play
Mhm.
again. He's all over the pitch, box to box. On set pieces, crosses, everything
Mhm.
you can
Mhm.
imagine in a midfielder. But again, Crystal Palace fixtures are not that great.
Mhm.
So it's just the balance of form and fixture that you
Yeah,
have to.
I would
Mhm.
actually rather have Zaha from that team.
Yeah,
If
I
I
think
was even
Zaha
going to
is.
bring in someone, yes, he does seem to be the penalty taker, the key player for that team as well.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Mhm.
should we even consider Crystal Palace player now from game week 6, 7 onwards?
I don't think so. I don't think their
Mm,
fixtures are good, but especially with that being said, that's why I'm against Saha, because he's too expensive for that. But
mhm.
if you, for example, have a 3 premium team, or you want to go for 3 premiums, then you might need to bring in an enabler at that 5 million,
Mhm.
5.5 million mark. And so if that's the case, then Conor Gallagher becomes a decent option.
Totally true, yeah. They
Mhm.
don't have one of the worst, but they don't have one of the best fixtures either, but they could potentially be able to do very good. I
Mhm.
think that it's enough about these cheap midfielders. I really want to
Mhm.
ask you, which of those elite midfielders now do you believe is going to be able to do best out of all midfielders?
Yeah, I think without a doubt, Salah is the best midfielder in
Mm-hmm.
the game. So Salah is staying in my team probably for the season.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a stretch last year where I took him out for a little bit and it backfired. So I'm just not going to go against Salah. He just seems to deliver every time, and he's so
Mm-hmm.
reliable as a captain. I like Salah a lot. I know Mane was a good differential this week, and I knew he was going to score, and he ended up scoring. But again, his finishing is atrocious and is way too expensive to go for. So I would avoid Salah. Benrahma, just scored against United, so his form is still going. His fixtures are decent up till game week 10. So the Benrahma Antonio combination is something to keep hold of, and something you shouldn't get rid of if you have him. And at the premium midfield mark, I think I covered pretty much Torres and Jota. I do want to talk about them real quick. So Jota, I think, is a good pick. I know he missed a sitter of a goal in game week 5, which was disappointing. But Jota is a great player, and Liverpool's fixtures are not too bad. So I would hold on to Jota if you have him. If you have to buy him, maybe that's a different story. And Torres, if you have Torres, just hold on to him, because I know he didn't start and people might be disappointed, but at 7.1 million being the starting striker for Man City, that's a steal, and you just have to realize that Torres is going to get maybe 2 out of 3 starts, but in those 2 out of 3 starts, his potential to score and to haul is very, very high. So stick with Torres.
He does seem to be their only real striker they have. So I believe that even Pep Guardiola is going to notice that. And he already does know that. So he should probably give him a lot of minutes. Even though he missed game week 5 now, I still do believe that he is going to start pretty much in most of the upcoming game weeks. And whenever he starts and City plays, City scores almost every time. Not now game week 5, because they did had a red card and something similar, but I still do expect of them to be able to do very good. So Torres is an excellent midfielder coming for a very low price that you should probably consider. And yes, I do agree that the one player that is must have, that you might get hurt if you do not own him, is Mohamed Salah. This is a guy that can score a hat-trick out of nowhere and pretty much destroy your score if you're not a Salah owner. Yes.
And the last one I want to mention, before we go to strikers, is shout out to my friend at FPL, Bruno. We run a show on Twitter called The Enablers, and I'm plugging it again, but please join us on Twitter, and we can, interact a lot with the community. But Bruno really is high on KDB right now. And we all know how amazing KDB is and how, fantastic of a footballer he is. And we should really keep an eye on KDB and think of him as a potentially very, very dangerous option as a premium.
He might just turn into a very dangerous one. He was on penalties himself as well, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So their fixtures are about to change into very good fixtures. So yes, Kevin De Bruyne might be able to even withstand Salah.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know. They're just too good of a players. Kevin De Bruyne have been very good in quality player for at least 10 years now.
Yeah.
Pretty much same goes to Salah. When we talked about midfielders, now I believe that I have said everything that I wanted to say about this week's midfielders. Do you have anything to add up before we move to the strikers?
No, that's it for me. Yeah.
And great. When we go to the strikers right now, I believe there are so many great strikers that we could potentially go for. Antonio is making a comeback from a red card. Bamford is still fit and ready to do really good, with Leeds having fantastic fixtures. Ronaldo joined Manchester United. He is expected to do very good no matter the opposition, as he is Ronaldo, and Manchester United are a very good team and offensive team that could potentially score against anyone and beat anyone with this team they're having today. Then it's Lukaku as well. Chelsea's fixtures do look very good now, game week 7 plus. There we have Tony as well, very cheap and very offensive-minded striker that is scoring from time to time and is very good for his value. And then there is Watford's Dennis as well. There's so many good informed strikers right now. Do you believe that, except for perhaps Ronaldo and Lukaku, there is somebody third that is looking better than the rest of the strikers.
Yeah, I think very good point about other than Lukaku and Ronaldo, because it has to start with Ronaldo and Lukaku. And a lot of people are considering a 3 premium team with Lukaku and Ronaldo in game week 7. Personally, I'm against it because I think the team value is going to be not team value. Your overall team is going to be weaker with those two in there. So for me, I'm looking on to moving Ronaldo on as good of a player and amazing as he is, and he keeps delivering. Right, even today he got a goal. Should have had maybe 1 or 2 more penalties, but I would move Ronaldo on for Lukaku in game week 7. So that's my strategy. And elsewhere, Vardy keeps delivering. I think people are overlooking Vardy, but I think the obvious pick would be Bamford. In the long run, because Bamford's fixtures from game week 7 after they play West Ham in 6 is Watford, Southampton, Wolves, Norwich, Leicester, Tottenham, Brighton. Just amazing, right? So I think that him and Rafinha together in your team as a Leeds double up is going to be okay, even though Leeds are struggling to find some form right now. Antonio is fine, a fine pick up till game week 10. So I benched him this week, and Chris, I believe you sold it for Bamford.
I sold him for Bamford, yeah.
Oh no! So I'll be starting him next week and keeping him till game week 10 most likely. So yeah, that's about it. I think Jimenez. I think I'm not so convinced on
not
as good
Jimenez,
as.
No, I don't.
think
he will do that good, even though they have very good fixtures. He has been terrible.
He hasn't scored at all.
Until game week 5, he did had like 14 shots. Only one of them ended up in the target. It was not a goal, but on the target. So pretty much he just likes to shoot, but nothing comes out of it. I think that changing Antonio to Bamford was a decision that he made because I am using a wildcat in game week 7. So when I combined game week 5 and 6, I thought it was better to go for Bamford for those 2 game weeks combined than having Antonio on the bench. And I did have 1 free transfer that I used that particular game week. I did not have anything else to worry about, I believe, in my team. So that was the reason I changed out Antonio to Bamford. I might just bring Antonio back on a wildcard game week 7. That is a possibility that I am considering right now. I just want to see what is Leeds going to do now. Leeds did had a terrible start of the season. They played against Newcastle now game week 6. Newcastle is one of those teams that has allowed most goals out of all Premier League teams, yet Leeds could not score more than 1 goal against them. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I think there's no one way to play this game, and I see your logic there, because if you're going to wild card, you might as well get the most out of him. So I see your logic, 2 games versus 1. And yeah, I also want to give a shout out to Watkins. I think he's going under the radar. Watkins is an annoying pick because last year, you know what I mean. He's just doesn't seem to deliver what he's capable of.
Yeah, they do have Ings as well right now, right? Aston Villa.
Watkins, which makes I think Ings allows Watkins to drift a little more to the side, which is, I don't know if it's good or bad for his game, but a special shout out to Tony. I had Ivan Toney from the beginning of the season, and he was very frustrating for a while, but he delivered for me in game week 5. And the point I want to make about Tony is related to strategy as well, is try to be patient and try to not take hits. I really believe in not taking hits because, if I had moved Tony to Pookie or somebody else try to make Bamford move by taking a hit, then I would have, what you mean, like sideways move and just pointless, right? And being patient with these like mid-price strikers and midfielders is very important, because You just don't know when they're going to get points. But they will get you points over a long period of time. Yeah.
To everyone listening that might not understand what a sideways move is where you transfer out a player that is perfectly fit and ready to play to some other player without any particular reason. Beside that, you think that the player you bring in is going to do better, then you take a hit for this, and many times you get burned for that. As FPL Sonaldo said right now, he does not want to take hits. I'm that kind of player myself as well. I believe that hits actually lower the potential of your end score, or the score you get at the end of the season. FPL Sonaldo did finish in the top 10,000 last season. So I would like to ask you, how many hits did you take last season? How were you able to finish in that good spot?
Yeah, I think I can't remember exactly, but I want to say about 5 hits maybe total, maybe a little more, but really not that many. Maybe I think around maybe 5 or 7 total. So that just goes to show, like, people are very trigger happy and want to make a ton of hits and transfers, but that's really not how to play the game. You want to play the game in increments of 3 to 4 game weeks, and kind of strategize long term, and try to avoid taking too many hits.
Even in some game weeks, when it comes to not taking a hit, I sometimes even decide to save that one transfer if I know that I can field out 11 players and all of them are fit and ready to play. I believe that that is something you do as well. When you have a full team of players, you actually want to save the transfer for the next game week.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes, it is very important that you guys have that free transfer. It is very important to actually have 2 free transfers for some particular game weeks where you want to change out players. And it is very important to avoid taking hits.
Yes, absolutely.
When it comes to the strikers now, we already talked a bit about Ronaldo, Lukaku. Which of these 2 do you believe have better potential to do good now? If let's say some of our listeners does not own any of them, who do you believe they should bring in for this particular game week?
Yeah, if you don't own any of them, then you should go for Lukaku, because Lukaku's about to have a really, really good run of fixtures from game week 7 onwards. Just to read it out, they play Man City in game week 6, but after that, it's Southampton, Brentford, Norwich, Newcastle, Burnley, Leicester, and then Man United in game week 13. So basically, they're just going on a run of amazing fixtures, and they're one of the best teams in the league, if not the best team in the league. They're beating Tottenham 2-0 right now as we speak. The game's going on.
Great.
And and Lukaku is their talisman. They're their key player when it comes to goal and goal involvement and everything you want in a premium striker. So as much as Ronaldo is amazing, his fixtures are going to get tough from game week 7. So go for Lukaku if you don't have any of them.
I do totally agree with you here. Even though Ronaldo might be one of those excellent players, one of the best in the world, one of the GOATs, but we don't actually expect Manchester United to get themselves involved in as many goals as Chelsea is expected. I do actually expect Chelsea to score potentially even up to 15 goals now in the next 6 or 7 games. And when that happens, it usually happens through Lukaku. So I do think that Lukaku is going to be able to do a bit better than Ronaldo now for the next 5 to 10 game weeks. I hope I don't get burned for saying that, because Ronaldo knows how to punish haters or people that don't trust in him. Then he can just jump in and make a hat trick or something similar. But Lukaku can do exactly the same.
Yeah, so yes. I think that wraps it up, right?
Yeah, I think that wraps it up for today. Guys, if you thought this video was of any fun, please do give it thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if that is something you have not done already. And please do follow FPL Sonaldo on Twitter, as he is a very helpful guy. He is very skilled with FPL. He knows what he is doing. Thank you for coming over, Sonaldo. And see you next time.
Yeah, see you next time. Thank you, Chris.